Welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I'm your host, Warren Wandling, the show that's dedicated to helping leaders to overcome obstacles, build resilience, and achieve success. And I have a great guest to help us do just that, Jason Jaggard. Welcome to the show, Jason. Well, yeah, thank you for being on the show. Jason, you have been known for the question, what if achievement was never the goal? You believe that faith and leadership belong together and that calling and not comfort is what really shapes true influence. As a best-selling author, leadership futurist, founder of Novus Global, you have helped business leaders, pastors, athletes embrace courage and multiply their impact. You've spoken at the Global Leadership Summit and you led at Mosaic Church, and you've produced a top 10 Apple film, and you're also the host of Beyond High Performance. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really excited to have a conversation.
So tell our listeners just a little more about kind of your background and your experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, I worked in the nonprofit space when I was in my 20s, and I got to work with a fantastic nonprofit. It's one of the best in the world at what it did. And then like a lot of people who get to work in a lot of great organizations, you have this itch to take a swing at leading your own thing. And, like many people, I left well. I started a small company and then realized that leading your own thing is a lot harder than it looks. So, which both gave me a new appreciation for the people who I was working for previously, but also created a deep sense of, man, if I'm going to be successful leading a company, I'm going to need to get some resources. I'm going to need to get some tools. And so I started exploring ontological tools, executive coaching tools, anything really I could get my hands on. And I spent probably the better part of a decade doing that, and then fell in love with a certain series of tools, and then started an executive coaching firm. So today we work with professional athletes. We work with executives at Fortune 500 companies. We've worked with people you watch on TV and see in magazines, and we get to help people who are already really, really good at what they do, see if there's something else inside of them they haven't tapped into yet.
Yeah, which is really an interesting concept that you bring out in your book, which is a great idea in reference to beyond high performance and what you mean by that. But I'm curious, you challenge leaders actually to go beyond high performance. So what was the obstacle that was in your life, Jason, that made that question of traditional success different?
You know, what's interesting, I saw that question before we started, and what's interesting about going beyond high performance, it doesn't remove obstacles, it actually creates obstacles. I think one of the interesting things about success or accomplishment or achievement, and I think those are all positive things. I want to be successful in my life. I want to achieve great things. It's not necessarily removing obstacles, it's finding obstacles worth trying to remove. And most people are busy trying to remove obstacles that are too small for their life. And so part of what it means to go beyond high performance is to say, what are the obstacles that are truly worth going after? What are the obstacles that are really truly worth trying to remove? And most people really don't realize that there are bigger obstacles that are worth tackling than the ones that they're currently tackling now.
That's interesting. So how does a leader determine if it's an obstacle worth addressing, or is it something else that they need to, is it a question they ask?
Well, it can be. And in some ways, it's about vision, right? So most people's vision is unintentionally too small for their life. And if you want to know, some people listening to this might say, I don't even have a vision, or I don't know what my vision is. But if you want to know, and we talk about this in the book, we have a chapter all dedicated to vision. And we say, whether you realize it or not, everybody is a visionary. Because if I were to ask you, hey, what are you doing later today? The future doesn't exist yet. And so I'm going to have dinner with my wife, or I'm going to go to this show, or I'm going to stay home and watch TV. Like that, congratulations, that's your vision for your future. And so most people struggle to do that. Now, high-performing leaders oftentimes have a vision. They know what they're going for. They know they're going to try to be the best in class at whatever company they're leading, or if they're in a sales role, they want to be one of the best in the organization in terms of sales and things like that. Or they have revenue goals. They have a vision in terms of how much money they want to make and things like that. But almost always the visions are, with rare exception, and we were working with, if you Google most famous people on earth, this guy was on that list, and we were working with him and multiple companies that he owned. And it was really fascinating. Most people would say that this guy is clear on his vision, is up to what he's doing, and is really performing at a high level. But he knew, many of your listeners probably know, that he had like this other gear inside of him. Like he had more to offer. He had this sense of this untapped potential that he was trying to get out. And he didn't know how to do that. He didn't know how to do that elegantly. He didn't know how to do that in a way that didn't destroy everything that he'd worked for previously. And so it was a pleasure for us to walk alongside him, one of our coaches, and then with our team to walk alongside his companies as they really began asking, and you kind of led me there with the word question, asking a different kind of question. And so what we say is high performers are asking the question, how can I be the best? Then we say, well, what's beyond high performance? And we coined this phrase a long time ago, this idea of meta performance, this idea of going beyond high performance. And meta performance is asking a fundamentally different kind of question. It's not asking, how can I be the best? It's asking the question, what am I capable of? Or what are our teams capable of? And the idea of how to be the best, that's a question about competition. The question, what am I capable of, is about imagination. It's about dreaming about something beyond what you currently think or what you can currently see. And we find that when we create a space or have a conversation or create a relationship with somebody where we can allow them the time and attention to explore what am I actually capable of, then all things begin to shift for them. And the obstacles that they thought they were trying to solve before they talk to us, oftentimes either A, become irrelevant, or B, they discovered that if they solve these new obstacles, that the old obstacles will be taken care of.
So you share a story in your book, which if our listeners have not gotten a copy of your book, highly recommend it.
Thank you.
I mean, it's one of those books that I've highlighted almost every page.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. But in there, you tell a story about a classroom of students whose goal shifts from me getting the best grades to something much more collaborative and ambitious. For someone who's really chasing personal success for years, but still feels a bit empty, what really happens inside a person when they move from me to a we goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that story. So a little background on that. We had this belief that our coaching is high end, our coaching is like elite, our coaching is not the cheapest thing in the world. And yet we had this belief that if our tools don't work with people of any socioeconomic background, then we're not as interested in them. Like, we want tools that work for humans, not just maybe affluent humans. And so we started doing work in prisons. We started using these tools with the homeless, and we started using these tools with under-resourced like high school kids. And that was a learning experience, because those environments are always more different than you think they are. But then also, it was such a blast and such a privilege to see people really take these tools that oftentimes are kept from them because of lack of resources, and to get it into their hands and to see what they could do with it. And so this was a group of under-resourced high school students in Los Angeles. They were going to a great school because of a lot of subsidies and financial support from organizations. And the shift that they made, because like when you're in high school and you say, hey, like, what's a high performing goal? They're going to say like getting good grades. Like that's the point of high school, right? You get good grades, so you get into a good college. And this particular high school has a high success rate of getting kids to go to college. And so we said, okay, well, what's beyond that? And they were thinking, well, A++? I don't know. Like, they really struggled with it at first. They're like, well, what's beyond getting good grades? And then one of the students raised their hand and they said, well, what if we were as committed to our own academic success as we were to other students in the classroom's academic success? So then, like, imagine a group of students where, yes, they are fiercely committed to getting great grades, but then they have an equal commitment to doing whatever they can. Obviously, people have to study and do their own thing, but students being equally committed to helping each other get great grades, ethically get great grades. And that opened up a whole new area of classroom management, energy, collaboration, creativity, ambition. And what they discovered was that it's actually, when you give a little bit of your time and energy to helping other people be successful, not only does it not damage your journey towards success, but it actually enhances your journey towards success. And that's something that great leaders know intuitively as you seek to go beyond high performance. And so we shift the question a little bit to not only ask, what am I capable of, but to ask the question, what are we capable of? And in our work, and I think we talked about this in the book, we talk about how every leader has the same two leadership challenges. The first is that they're drastically underestimating themselves. And that's what we talk a lot about and what we're talking about now. The second is that they dramatically underestimate what other people are capable of. And so part of the meta-performing journey, and why we love working with companies, not just individuals, is because we like coming in and giving frameworks and tools and philosophies and paradigms and helping them develop skills that not only help people access potential they have inside of themselves, but creating a culture that helps people unleash the potential of each other at the same time. And in some ways, not to keep going about this, but that was the whole impetus behind the firm. So, you probably know people who are executive coaches, and like 90% of executive coaches, if not more, work by themselves. They work alone, and they were in business and they did well, and now they're out of business, and now their business is helping other people do business, and which is great. Which is totally fine. And yet the executive coaching space is very competitive. So whenever executive coaches are hanging out with each other, they're not letting their hair down and talking about their best practices. They see each other as adversaries in some ways. And so we thought, well, that's really limiting and actually damages a coach's ability to grow. What if we created a community of coaches who were as dedicated to each other's success as they were to their own? And if they shared best practices, if we coach each other, if we challenge each other, and what could that create? And, we started the company 10 years ago with just a handful of people. And fast forward now, we have over 100 people in the firm with over 600 clients working with some of the most amazing leaders on earth. And so the experiment really panned off. Like what we say in the firm, what we said in the book was, a vision is worthy of your life when it requires other people to accomplish it. There's no vision that is worth our lives that doesn't kind of force us into partnering with other people in beautiful ways in order to see that vision come to fruition.
Yeah. And one of those concepts that you talk about in the book is the intuitive fence.
Yeah.
In reference to what holds back the leader. Some people call it possibly an invisible ceiling or a constraint, but I think it's really fascinating how you actually explain it in the book to help a leader go deeper when they hit that fence, if you will. Can you kind of go deep inside of that, of what, even though if someone's a high performer and they hit that, whatever that ceiling or whatever's stopping them, what are those common, like their thoughts in their head, so their self-talk or limiting beliefs that it might show up or sound like?
Yeah, well, and thank you for saying that. That's one of my favorite tools. When we take that into teams and when we work with individuals and we help them play with what we call the intuitive fence, that's one of the most powerful, life-changing things that people can fiddle with. And as an intro to that, like every person has an intuition about everything. And I don't know if you're a Daniel Kahneman fan. He wrote a New York Times bestselling book. He's an economist. He wrote a New York Times bestselling book called Thinking Fast and Slow. And he's renowned for his work on intuition. And what's fun about his work and what's fun about him specifically is he talks a lot about intuition and how often our intuition lies to us. Now, we don't like admitting that. We like saying, trust your gut, trust your intuition. And your intuition is right, probably most of the time. But what he discovered was there are many times, way more than you and I would ever think, when your intuition is actually lying to you. And it's lying to you not because it doesn't like you or is trying to hurt you. It's actually your intuition lies to you to protect you, to keep you safe. And that's never more true than when we're talking about what you're capable of. And so like right now, I have like this intuition of what I think I'm capable of. And you probably have an intuition around what you're capable of. And it's almost certainly wrong. It's almost certainly based on your limited life experience and also what you were talking about a second ago, which was some coaches call limiting beliefs or invisible beliefs. And, I was thinking about your question as well. Like oftentimes when I'm on podcasts or having conversations with people, the question gets asked, like, what's like the most common limiting belief? And I was thinking about it, and I appreciated you sending the questions ahead of time because I'm never satisfied with my answer. Almost always I give an answer, then afterwards I'm like, that's not really true. And I was trying to figure out like, why does a typical answer? In fact, Tony Robbins was just asked on the podcast the other day, what's the most common limiting belief? And his answer is a similar answer to what I've given and a similar answer to what I've heard lots of other coaches give as well. And it's not that our answer is wrong, it's just incomplete. So I think an honest answer, it isn't that there's ever one limiting belief. There's no limiting belief that's common, but there are nests of beliefs. There are I call it like a barbed wire blanket, like it keeps you warm, but don't move because then you'll get hurt. And the nest of beliefs, thank you. The nest of beliefs everybody has are in categories. So like people have very common limiting beliefs about money. They have very common limiting beliefs about themselves. They have very common limiting beliefs about time management. They have limiting beliefs about the market. They have limiting beliefs about what their spouse wants for them or what they want for themselves. They have limiting beliefs about, and by limiting, you could also replace that with like wrong. Like most people, including me, like I have beliefs about what a marriage looks like that are probably just like if I were to actually watch people who are wildly happily married, that my beliefs and their beliefs are probably different in some way. Like people who've been, I'm happily married, but people who've been married for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. and they know something I don't know. And there's that old saying that it can't be that old, but I've seen it on the internet for several years where it's Beyonce has the same amount of time in the day as you do.
Yeah.
And you know what, as kitschy as that is, and as like a meme, an internet meme that is, I think about that all the time because it's completely true. What does Beyonce know about time management that I don't? What does Beyonce know about risk that I don't? What does Beyonce know about relationships? And I don't just mean like her and her husband or her kids. I mean like in terms of business relationships, the things that Beyonce knows about business that I could only hope to learn is massive. And so, but I'm living in this world where I'm like, I can never do what she does. I can never do what he does. I can never do what they do. I can never do. And it's not necessarily because of a lack of talent, although with Beyonce, it is for me a lack of talent, but it is almost always because our internal architecture is different. Her belief systems are different than my belief systems. And not only that, but I probably have judgments about successful people's beliefs. And one of the ways you can begin, if your listeners are wondering, a fantastic test for what their limiting beliefs might be, just ask them, what are the judgments you have of people who are more successful than you? And that is a good indicator of like a breadcrumb trail that's going to lead to the limiting beliefs that they have. So it's like, oh, because she's always selling herself, or because he's always bragging about himself, or because, that person's more attractive than me, I can never be successful because that person was born into privilege or whatever. Like those are the things that we tend to judge people for, or they're all about money. That's why they have money. Like there's all these beliefs that run around our interior world. And oftentimes the path to success is hiding behind the belief that you judge in others who are more successful than you. And I just find that to be fascinating.
That is fascinating. So with that in mind, because that was a great statement, what's one practical shift that a leader can take to break through that plateau and step into that bigger game?
Yeah, I would say that the first step is recreationally playing with a bigger vision. So at the firm, we call this the add a zero game, right? So I'll use money just because it's really easy to measure. So like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, what kind of revenue do you want to create next year? And maybe that person might say, oh, I would love to create $200,000 of revenue, or $500,000 of revenue, or, $5 million of revenue, or $100 million of revenue, or billion, like whatever the number is. And then just for fun, add a zero. And by the way, this is another great test to see where your limiting beliefs are. So if a person says, yeah, next year I want to make $5 million, then say, great, so add a zero. And so now it's $50 million. And then all of a sudden, what's going to happen somatically is you're going to feel anxious, you're going to feel scared, you're going to feel dejected, maybe you're going to feel frustrated, and you're going to say, oh, that would never work because. And then whatever the becauses are, those are the things that those becauses, I'm not saying that those becauses are absolutely false. They may be partially true, or some of them may be totally true. But that's where we want to start examining. Once we expand your vision, beliefs are going to reveal themselves. And now we can go to work. Now we can have a conversation. Are these beliefs really true? Are these just things that you choose to believe so that you don't have to work hard, or you don't have to learn, or to protect yourself from some kind of pain that you experienced when you were 10 or 15 or whatever? And so a practical shift is expanding your vision by adding a zero, and then see what comes up. And now it's kind of like opening up the body. And now we can do the surgery to help a person heal into something greater.
That's interesting. So when you're working with leaders that obviously a high performer, they're already successful, maybe from different standards, but they're trying to meet to that mega performance. What shift do they go through? Is it a mindset shift once they identify that thought? Is it an emotion that they're trying to identify to make that click or shift to move past that limit?
Yes, you're asking like what does that shift look like for them?
Yeah, that would be an easier way to say that.
Yeah. Well, so one is it's almost always a process. Some people, they shift and it's like a chiropractic adjustment and they're ready to go. More often than not, people shift, but then they drift. And so if you're anything like me, I can go to an event, or I can listen to a podcast, or I can read a book, and it kind of gets on you a little bit, but just because, and it's exciting and it's inspiring, but just because it's gotten on you doesn't mean that it's gotten in you. And so the shifting from on you to in you is usually a process. And so the process usually looks like a person coming back over and over again to the same conversation to get that chiropractic adjustment as it begins to sink into their bones, and as they can begin practicing that new perspective, practicing that new way of being, practicing that new attitude out in the world with their teams or leaders or whatever. And that's why we do coaching. Most of our coaching practices, we work with people 3 to 4 times a month. And somebody said, like, why do you do that? And like you do once a month or something. And I hate once a month coaching because part of the coaching experience is about habit formation. And research shows that if you don't check in with someone around new habits every 7 to 10 days, if you go longer than that, the time that it takes to build a new habit actually diminishes. But if you're checking with people 7 to 10 days or more, then the probability of that habit sticking, and then, like I said, not just getting on you, but getting in you, goes up astronomically over time. And then over time, it becomes going from being novel to being normal. And that's the process that's really, really exciting for people, is when they expand their vision, when they begin making choices and commitments that take them towards their vision. And then here's what's crazy, man. Like, then what happens is you start accomplishing things that 6 months ago or a year ago you thought were impossible. But as you're accomplishing them, it feels completely normal. It's like almost inevitable. As people, like, I'll work with people and our coaches will work with people. And at the end of the year, we'll say, what kind of results did you create? And they'll say, dude, if I would have told you what my life looks like now a year ago, I would not believe you. But like now it's just like an ordinary Tuesday. And that's super, super fun.
Yeah, definitely seeing that transformation take place. I'm sure that is. So what's the first action that if one of our listeners are listening to this podcast and they want to take that next step and go beyond high performance in the next 24 hours, what should they do to be able to start that momentum?
Yeah, I would say, I'll give you two answers to this other than the increasing your vision exercise. I would say, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, the meta-performing vision can only be done with others. And so what you can do in the next 24 hours is you can, if you're listening to this on a podcast or you're watching on YouTube or wherever you watch this, get your phone out and do one of two things. Either A, text someone right now and say, I have bigger dreams that you and I haven't talked about, and I want to share them with you so that I can begin practicing having that be a part of my life and our relationship. And then the second option is, and there's a lot of ways you can do this, but of course, like get some professional assistance. So whether that's there are tons of coaches out there. We have a saying at the firm, it's called the lamppost theory, which is it's worth paying a lamppost to talk at it for an hour, because the benefits of talk therapy are real. So oftentimes your coach doesn't even have to be even very good to be worth 30 minutes of your life a couple times a month to just talk through bigger conversations than what you currently have with yourself. And so whether like you get online and Google executive coaches, of course you can go to novus.global and we have forms there. You can fill out, start that journey like that. You can do that, but doesn't really matter. Just find somebody who is committed to helping you expand what you're capable of. And if you do that in the next 24 hours, a year from now, your life will be different.
Yeah, that is great insight. Thank you, Jason. So I'm curious, what was the greatest obstacle that you've overcome that has shaped you into the leader that you are today?
Well, probably when I was young, I had a massive fear of public speaking, massive. And I remember even early in my career, I got invited to speak in front of a large group of people, and I had a panic attack and had to cancel the engagement. This is when I was in my early 20s. And that fear of public speaking in my 20s and 30s was something that I was like a dog with a bone. Like I was determined not to let my life be muted by this fear. And so, and I've done, in that regard, I've done everything from hiring speaking coaches to exploring whether psychiatric medicine was needed, to meditation, to prayer, to practice, to everything. And now you fast forward, 20, 30 years or so, however old I am now. And I regularly go out and speak. Recently, I was speaking in front of 1,000 people. And not only am I not having panic attacks, but I'm actually having a lot of fun. And the reality is a lot of those beliefs for me around public speaking or the anxiety came from limiting beliefs. It came from beliefs about myself. It came from beliefs about my audience. It came from beliefs about preparation. One of the beliefs I had, and this came out when I was working with a coach, by the way, don't ever hire a coach who doesn't have a coach. It's like going to the dentist.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. It's like going to a dentist who doesn't like going to the dentist. Every coach in our firm has a coach. I have a coach right now, 2 of them actually. And so, but through the coaching, the belief, this is not flattering, but the belief that came up was I have like a natural base level of giftedness and communication. And I believed that I could be great and just wing it. So the belief was I shouldn't have to work this hard. If I'm having to work this hard, something must be wrong. Like maybe if I'm having to work this hard at it, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Mm-hmm. And there are 2 things that help with that, dispel that myth for me, by the way. And by the way, I find that to be one of the most prevalent limiting beliefs is to be successful, you shouldn't have to work hard. It should be easy, or it should be at least a little easier than whatever it is you're experiencing right now. And it's almost never true. And so coaching was helpful, but also what was really helpful is as my speaking career took off, as I was running the company and doing other things, I met other world-class speakers and I saw and they became friends. And so now I have several friends who are, not only like New York Times bestselling authors, but they go across the world and they speak in front of, millions of people a year. And we talk about how hard they work. And we've talked about how hard they've worked. And not only were they working hard, but they were working a lot harder than I was. And so through coaching, I discovered, and through the proximity of those people, I discovered that not only does getting over that belief, one, helps me work harder and not resent the work, but then also not only does hard work create a better outcome, but it creates more confidence, because then when you get on stage, you don't think, oh, maybe I didn't prepare hard enough for this, or, hey, well, let's see how this goes. You think, no, I have done my best. I have done what is it? Tom Cruise got that great line. Don't be careful, be confident. Or no, don't be careful, be competent. And it's like, do the work to be good, and then you'll be good. And I find that to be true.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that insight. So what does the future hold? Any special projects that you and your firm are working on?
Yeah. Lots of projects the firm is working on. So I'm working on book number 3 right now. Yeah, thank you. And book number 4 eventually. But so that's kind of you can work on multiple projects at once kind of a deal. At the firm, we're having a blast. And so we're in a rapid expansion season. We're actually one of the fastest growing executive coaching firms in the world right now. And that's very exciting and very rewarding. We just, in the past year, we've had former GMs of NBA teams join, former NBA players join as coaches. The head of our sport division is run by a guy who's a 2-time Stanley Cup hockey player. And so the caliber of our coaches is rapidly going up. That's super, super fun. And we practice what we preach. And so right now there are tools that we're building internally that we need for ourselves. And book number 3 is one of those. Book number 3 is, I'm not going to tell you what it's about yet, but are things that came up, challenges that came up as we're trying to get very high performers to work well with each other. And so we've developed these tools and we've been using them internally, and they are helpful. And now we've taken it out, and we just did a workshop with the front office of an NBA team, and that went really well with the tools. And so we're turning that into a book. So we'd like to build our own tools internally, see if they work on us, see if they work with our clients, and then we export it to the broader world. So that book will come out hopefully in 2027.
Okay. What were you looking for?
Yeah, thank you.
So I know our listeners would like to be able to reach out. So what's the best way, Jason, for them to be able to connect?
Yeah, the best way to connect to the firm is just our website, which is novus.global. And then there's actually another company, our sister company, called the Meta Performance Institute. And that's where, so with the firm, we work with high performers. With the Institute, we train people how to develop these coaching skills that we have. And so there's 2 different websites for that. There's novus.global, and that's all it is, novus.global, no .com or anything like that. And then the Institute also has a funny website. It's the letters M as in mom and P as in P, I guess, .institute, mp.institute. And so novus.global and mp.institute.
Yeah, that is great. I know. And I'll make sure both of those links are in the show notes.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jason, for sharing all your great strategies and tips, helping our leaders to really break through their obstacles and achieve success.
Yeah, it was great to meet you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, thank you. Again, this is your host, Warren Wandling. Say until next time, be resilient and be an obstacle buster.